big changes over here. Oh, don't fall, don't fall. Good morning. Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. I think this is our 12th weekly garden tour, and we have previously seen peaks in the garden where the garden is lush and beautiful and really producing. Our peak lasted about 3 or 4 weeks, and now we're starting to see kind of a downward trend in the health of the plants, and the weeds are kind of starting to take over. I need you to know that this is absolutely normal. So if this is happening to you, you are not a failure. You are a gardener, much like the rest of us. And we gardeners are human, and there's only so much that we can do. Actually, this past week I spent a lot of time inside, partially because of the harvest. I was preserving a lot of peaches, which we don't grow here, but the things that we don't grow, we like to buy in season and preserve in season. So I dealt with those. And then we had a heat wave towards the end of the week. So I was trying to, take care of myself. I came out only to really take care of the animals and harvest the garden, but I didn't spend a lot of time trying to take care of the garden or weed it, so it's gonna be kind of different looking today. Before we get going and talking about the garden and harvesting the garden, I wanted to point out that YouTube allowed me to open up our memberships for the channel. So what this is going to be is just bonus content. Our channel is going to still be producing our regular videos and our regular community posts, but our members are going to get to see a little bit more behind the scenes, maybe get a little bit more advanced notice on some new exciting things happening here on the farm. If you'd like to see what that's all about, you can go ahead and click the join button down below. It's not automatically going to sign you up for anything. You do have to go through a couple steps should you choose to become a member to the channel. If not, no big deal at all. I just thought something I would bring up with you guys. You can't hear it very well, but the greenhouse is buzzing this morning. I kind of like to switch up our garden tours between evening tours and morning tours. The light looks different, and really the plants are doing different things. Like as an example, our squash plants are not open in the evening, so you can't see the bees doing their work. As you might have noticed, that okra was kind of hard to rip off. It's better if you can snip these off, but I have all I can to remember the basket. Remembering shears, totally different thing. I was actually in the greenhouse a lot yesterday making my bean harvests. I have a lot of different beans growing in here. These are purple hull pink eye peas. And then over here I have black eyed peas, as well as, your standard like green bean. These are Blue Lake bush beans. And I also have some really cool dragon tongue bush beans. Now this one isn't particularly brilliantly colored, but a lot of them, when they get a little bit bigger, have these really gorgeous purple stripes. Because I knew I wasn't going to be harvesting beans today, I took a picture of my bean harvest from yesterday. That's about what we're pulling in every 2 to 3 days, which is a huge blessing. I want to be able to can 25 quarts of green beans. We'll see. I've got 10 down already. This is our first year growing these vining peas, these southern peas. And something cool that I noticed is they'll put on their initial flowers in sets of peas, and then right above that, they're going to create another set of blooms, which in turn is going to be another set of peas. Look. See that? This one has several different ones, but then we're having more blooms up here. So as long as I'm careful while I'm harvesting these and I don't knock those flowers off, we're gonna have black-eyed peas likely until the frost. I guess potentially we could have black-eyed peas until the frost. The goal with this greenhouse is actually to fill it up with brassicas, or cool loving plants like broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower. And I want to do that probably before our estimated first frost date. So I don't know if we're going to be able to see the full capacity of these black-eyed peas, but they're already producing way more than I expected. I didn't know they would make successions of blooms like that. Behind here too, I have a couple different squash plants. I'm going to need your help figuring out what they are, because they are not what I thought I planted. Let me actually take you over to show you what I thought I planted over there, and then we'll go back there and I'll show you what's actually growing. I don't know what it is. So I have a lot of seeds for this. It's called a bush style sugaretti. It's a hybrid type spaghetti squash. That's what they look like. That particular plant on that side of the greenhouse it was labeled as a bush variety, but it's definitely a vining variety. Those vines are very, very long. But these plants, these are a bush variety. See how they're a lot more compact. They don't get very long with their vine. The vine maybe gets 4 or 5 feet long. This is what I can see on here. It does resemble a spaghetti squash, kinda, but the plant next to it, which should be the same variety or the same thing, is this. I don't know what this is. What I'm wondering is if the seeds that I bought for the bush style sugaretti, if they're not really like stable in their genetics, and I planted, or I thought I planted, the bush style sugaretti over here, it just doesn't look really like a spaghetti squash. It's got a different shape. Do you guys know what that is? I do have these round zucchini as well, but they look significantly different than what's growing over there. Actually, this round zucchini plant is really starting to see some disease. Truthfully, those round zucchinis are just okay. I'm not gonna break my back trying to save that plant from the disease. It'll probably come out this week, and I'll put in some more bush beans over there. I haven't really talked about this side of the greenhouse in quite a while. My green stock is over here. I am chronically horrible at remembering to water it. Containers need a lot of water this time of year. When it's, 100 degrees outside, they probably need water just about every day. I guess it would depend on the soil composition in your pots and how much wind that they are exposed to. But I'm really bad about watering this. Probably not gonna water it right now just because I'm trying to finish up this garden tour and then get to milking my goats. But last year too, we had this volunteer cherry tomato come up, and she's back again this year. This is more than likely more than one plant. See there? Those yellow currant cherry tomatoes like to volunteer around the edge of the greenhouse, which is totally fine. I don't need to put anything there, and they're generally not in the way. Came back over to the greenhouse for my bigger basket. I don't want to put all these cucumbers on top of those tomatoes. That's not a good order of things. Although I don't really know exactly how many cucumbers we're going to be picking today. At first, the cucumbers were coming on really strong, and I was having to come out literally every single day to harvest, and I probably still could stand to do so. Coming out every other day is making my gherkin cucumbers a little bit bigger than I'd like, but truthfully, I've gotten so much off of these plants. My canning goals for these pickles are already met, so all this is just bonus. Next door, we've got our slicer cucumbers. This variety is a first for us this year as well. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but it's Bait Alpha. My kids are also growing a cucumber in their garden. We bought the starts from an Amish greenhouse earlier in the year, and so it just said cucumber. I don't know what variety it is, but they have said that their cucumbers have started to get bitter on the skins, and that happens to a lot of cucumbers because of the heat. But they have reported that this variety is not bitter, and it's been super, super hot, so win. Another thing that gardeners may notice with their cucumbers this time of year is they've got some funny shapes. A lot of the times they'll be more bulbous towards the vine, and then as they get towards the tip, they get this little point on it. I actually have quite a few of those out here as well. See, this is another good example. And this is a pollination issue. It's not necessarily because there's not enough bees to pollinate the plant, but the heat can actually render the pollen sterile. And so when the pollen is sterile, it's not gonna be able to pollinate very well. So if you're seeing cucumbers like this in your garden this time of year, it's likely not your fault, it's just the heat. Over along here we have our little batwing pumpkin has put on a few more little gourds. This one has a little bicolor pumpkin on it, but this variety, with this one over here, looks to be all green. And I had been harvesting these birdhouse gourds that are out here on the lane, smaller, and treating them like cucumbers. But I eventually stopped harvesting them as little small edibles because I have so many actual cucumbers that it was too much. So we're gonna leave these guys on here and see what they do. Our tromboncino squash are looking lovely. They've turned a little bit from their young green color to more of a tan color. And the plan with these is just to leave them on to cure. They're a lot like a butternut, and that's how we're gonna treat them. Big changes over here. A lot of you know that I have been very eagerly anticipating the harvest of these spaghetti squash, and it looks like we're getting really close. You can probably notice a pretty dramatic difference from the way that the plants looked last week I think it was this particular plant that had more powdery mildew on it than some of the other plants. But truthfully, I don't know if this is necessarily due to powdery mildew. These plants have been working hard to mature these fruits for a while, and I think this is just time. It is just time for these plants to die off. You can see that the squash is really starting to get that nice buttery yellow color. I'm gonna leave these on at least another week. I really hope to get the maximum amount of storage capability out of these squash, and leaving them out here to cure on the vine is really how I'm going to accomplish that. I do need to be careful though, because as these dry out, they're going to be getting weaker. And really just the weight of the squash or a good strong wind could send them tumbling down, and if they fall, they could bruise or crack, and that would obviously defeat the purpose. So I've got to watch the weather closely and hope that our possum that raided our garden last year doesn't come back. The Kajari melons are coming along great. No signs of ripening quite yet. Melons, melons, melons as far as the eye can see. There's honeydew here. Down here we have Charente melon. Aren't those beautiful? Nobody's ripened yet. This part of our trellis is really starting to sag. I probably shouldn't shake it like that. There's quite a few melons on here. I had mentioned last week that a lot of our melons fell off due to the wind before I got the chance to strap them up. And I didn't think that the watermelon was going to produce anymore, but it is. It's pretty bright on this side of the trellis right now, this time of day, but you can see we've got a couple more melons. I've got to be on top of actually stringing these up so these don't snap off. And there's a couple on the ground here too. These guys will be okay. Over here, this thing that looks kind of like a Kajari melon. This is our armpit melon. And the armpit melon is an accidental cross that happened in my garden last year. It looks like a Kajari melon, but the inside is orange like a Charente melon. And I had grown those two varieties close together in the previous year. And so that's what we got. The flesh tastes oddly savory. It's so hard to describe. It's honestly a lot like a sweet tomato with a little bit of a melony hint, and there's like an umami, almost tingle aftertaste. It's really interesting. We love it. So I saved some seed, not knowing exactly what would happen. This looks a lot like the melon that we grew last year, so maybe we're starting to get some stabilization going on. I do not know. But those aren't ripe yet either. They're going to be orange-ish on the outside, a lot like the Kajari. So are you guys noticing anything funny going on in the art? We got a storm the other day and it was pretty windy, which is not abnormal for us in this area. But what is abnormal is we don't normally have a crop that is this heavy with fruit on this archway at this time, and it kind of blew over and then stayed. I hope the camera is going to be able to pick it up well, but we've got a very severe dip this way. There's a lot of heavy fruit on the side, and that's because the birdhouse scorch starts right here and it grows up over, and the first fruits that it put on obviously are close to the base of the vine, and so it's very heavy on this side. I think it may have been smarter, and I can do this in subsequent years, to plant the birdhouse gourd on this side, because I know that our worst winds are from the west and the south this time of year, and so there'd be a lot more of a buffer. But here we are, and it's gonna stay like this because these are not ready to harvest. From what I understand, what we need to do is actually wait for our first frost, wait for these vines to die. And I've heard people say too that it's best to let them cure out here if I can on the trellis. And I might be able to, I also might not be able to, depending on how our winds are. I can take them down and kind of stack them on a pallet to let them cure that way. And that's probably the route that I'll take, because I'm gonna wanna try to fix my trellis. So these are actually cattle panels in here, and these are regular sized T-posts. They are probably 4 feet down, and so I don't think these are going anywhere. It's holding, but I guess it's still beautiful either way. These are getting real low. Gotta watch my head when I walk through. I did finally notice too that our loofah gourd, which is in here, you just can't see it, that is finally starting to kind of overtake the birdhouse gourd in some spots and be able to put out flowers and get pollinated. I was really worried that the birdhouse gourd had completely taken over the loofah gourd, which is right here, but I think we actually might get some loofah. You can see the loofah gourd here. These are yellow flowers, that's loofah. These white flowers here, this is birdhouse gourd. I did just hit my head on. The raised bed garden is a hot mess, y'all. I'm just warning you ahead of time. It is. I've noticed that our bantam sweet corn is starting to dry up on the silks here. So we've got another corn harvest in our future. The corn that I had over here, the peaches and cream sweet corn, I think we've gotten everything out of here that we can. I just need to come through here and clean this out. And I know that when I do so, I've got a few potatoes in here to harvest. This is something I'm gonna worry about this week. Again, it was just way too hot this week to really deal with any of this. Peaches and cream, hot pepper is getting really loaded down with its fruit. I think these are going to ripen to a peach color. Right now it looks like all the peppers are yellow. I'm sure they are usable. I'm sure they are hot. But at the moment we have plenty of hot sauce, so I'm in no rush to pull these off. I think letting them get to their full ripeness and full flavor is going to be the best. Right next to those Sugar Rush Peach, I have my favorite variety of snacking pepper. It's finally starting to put on some fruit. This is the habanada. These will also mature to like an peachy orangey color. And these are heatless habaneros. They look scary. They look spicy. And I'll say that they are not entirely heatless, but they have the most amazing fruity flavor that I never expected out of a pepper. The heat that they have though is really, really mild. It's like putting black pepper on your food. So I am growing Sugar Rush Peach and the habanada and a few other peppers real close together. That's fine, but what I want to keep in mind is that I don't really want to save the seeds back from any of those sweet peppers and hope to get a sweet pepper next year, because all of those pepper varieties, including the hot ones, are so close together. There's a very good chance of cross-pollination, and I don't want to be surprised and plant something that I think is supposed to be a sweet pepper that turns out hot next year. So we're just going to be eating those and not saving seeds from any of those peppers. Got another okra here. It's getting kind of swallowed up by this corn. The corn blew over in the wind that we had the other day. It should stand up. I don't know, we'll see. I noticed that this okra had a flower on it the other day though, and so we're gonna be having a little pod to harvest in a few days. Truthfully, I wasn't sure how this okra would do out here by itself. I've always grown okra like in groups, and so it never occurred to me that maybe okra would need a second okra plant in order to be pollinated, but that's not the case. It seems to be self-fertile, so good to know. I have eggplant seeds, but I actually bought this eggplant start from our Amish nursery, and it just said eggplant. So I had been leaving this on and leaving this on the plant, expecting it to get a little bit bigger, but I don't think it's going to. I noticed in one of Jess's videos, she's from Roots and Refuge Farm, she was picking eggplant about this size, so figured maybe some of them are supposed to be small like this. I don't know. I've only ever grown eggplant one other time, and I think we got one, but I think it was a little bit bigger than this. Got quite a few more eggplant blooms over here, so we'll see. There's another little one. So I've actually got quite a few tomatoes to harvest out here. This one is pretty big. This is a Belgian Giant, my absolute favorite slicer tomato. Now this one, when I pulled it off, I can tell that it's got a little bit of a crack. So I'm just gonna pull it out like this, and I need to deal with this today. I can't let this sit on my counter. Basically, this was two different blooms that kind of fused together on the bottom, and as soon as I picked it off, it started to fall apart, which is fine. It's nice and ripe. We're good to go. This variety ripens to this like salmon-y pink color. It is so, so good. One of the reasons that I really like it is it's super meaty. It's not necessarily like really, really juicy, but it's got a really great flavor and doesn't have a whole bunch of seeds. Right next to it here, there's quite a few black beauties that are ready to harvest. I've noticed that my black beauties have a couple little yucky spots on them. I don't like the look of these spots. I don't know if this is a bacterial thing or what. I have been just cutting the spots out and freezing these for a sauce. This one doesn't have any spots on it, but it's got a little spider on it with her egg sac. Sorry, Mama, that was a bad spot. I noticed while I'm down here picking cherry tomatoes that I see a flash of red off of a pepper. I had purchased these snacking peppers from the Amish as well as starts, and you can see they start out green, but it looks like this particular plant ripens to red. Looks like we could have gotten any kind of color that's right there, but this particular plant is red. I actually didn't know until I started growing peppers that each color pepper grows on one plant only. You're not going to get like a Christmas tree of color on one plant. Not really. So they all start out green, and you can see different, stages of peppers. Some are green and some are whatever the maturing color is. You can get that on one plant, but like this plant isn't going to also grow yellow and orange and purple peppers. It's just gonna have the genetics for red. Oh, I think this plant might be orange. See? This one looks red. Oh, don't fall, don't fall. Whew. Many of you guys do not know, but some of you do. My tripod is held together with elastic bands, and you almost fell. I dropped a tomato. Oh, this is a heavy basket this week. Holy moly, whoa. And as I mentioned, I had picked all of the beans yesterday, and that was 2 huge baskets full, or 2 decent sized baskets full. Here is the tomato and cucumber and eggplant haul for this week, or at least this video. And then, woo, there we go. In here we've got our cherry tomatoes and some peppers. So I posted on our community tab a picture of me dehydrating these cherry tomatoes. Actually, I think it was a picture of just the tray of cherry tomatoes, and people had asked what the green ones are. And really, they're yellow, I guess. They're called the blue cream berries. I've got these ones. They are a little bit green on the inside. And then, our favorite little guys. This one is particularly ripe, so this one is probably yellow on the inside. But these blue cream berries, kind of green. So good. As always, thank you guys so much for joining me in the garden today. If you'd like to, hit that join button. Not necessarily to join, but just to see what our memberships are all about. And stay tuned to the channel. I've been teasing a little bit about an announcement about a new addition to our homestead, and I'm going to be showing that in the next video.
All right, goat lovers, we are now in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. We are dropping off this